Nimitz and the Battle of Midway: Rights and Responsibilities by J.T. Tynert, Brooks Main, and Asher Yaffe.
Then in December, America's role in World War II was suddenly crystallized by the Japanese.
Danger struck. At 6:10 in the morning, Japanese planes bombed Pearl Harbor, a U.S. military base. This attack was detrimental and was a horrible start to the U.S.'s campaign in World War II. Chester Nimitz. Nimitz was born in Fredericksburg, Texas in 1885. From 1901 to 1905, Nimitz attended the U.S. Naval Academy. He finished 7th in his class. Over the next 30 years, Nimitz spent his time on many different ships and continued to be promoted. He later became an admiral in 1941, right before the Battle of Midway. Chester Nimitz was an extremely risky admiral. For example, there's even a principle called Nimitz's calculated risk. Calculated risk is when you outweigh all the problems and benefits, and even though it may not seem either probable, likely, or sure, you proceed otherwise and hope for the best. Nimitz used this principle during the Battle of Midway. He had incredible faith in his peers, who were guided by very clear instructions that Nimitz had relayed to them previously. This was mostly regarding the USS Yorktown ship. The USS Yorktown was previously damaged in battle. It was unsure whether the ship would be ready or repaired in time for the apex of the war. On May 14th, 1942, the code breakers of Station Hypo detected that a possible Japanese raid may occur at the Battle of Midway. The Yorktown was still getting repaired after the Battle of Coral Sea, and it was predicted to be ready 5 days before the Japanese were expected to attack. Nimitz used his calculated risk and decided to put the damaged Yorktown into battle.
Admiral Ernest King, who was the chief of the American naval operations, was at first hesitant to give Nimitz the go-ahead to attack as the United States got ready for the Battle of Midway. He was aware of the potential dangers and risks that might come with the attack. For example, the Pacific might become vulnerable if more carriers were lost, and America's carrier fleet was still recovering from the Battle of the Coral Sea. King was concerned with Nimitz putting scarce resources to work against what was anticipated to be a much more powerful Japanese force. However, Nimitz felt that the only way to change the course of the war was to strike first, supported by crucial information from the codebreakers. In the end, Nimitz was able to convince him, and so King gave the order in spite of his skepticism, which gave way for one of the most important naval engagements in history.
Nimitz was willing to fight 5 carriers with only 3 of his own, and was even willing to go with only 2 in case the Yorktown wasn't ready. What was he thinking? This is where rights and responsibilities come into play. It was Nimitz's responsibility to make the right call. He also had the rights to make whatever call he wanted. He did this because of what was going on in the rest of the war. Japan was destroying the U.S. allies in the Pacific theater, and the power had been shifting. The major reason why Nimitz was able to turn it around was because of code breaking. Code breakers were able to dissect and figure out Japanese code, and they knew exactly when and where the Japanese were attacking. Because of this, Nimitz posted in a 120-degree arc a bunch of submarines. The idea was to damage the enemy's carriers as much as possible. By doing this, there would be much less damage done to American carriers. This was called point luck. This was a huge moment. The plan worked perfectly, and the Japanese got annihilated by the U.S. at the Battle of Midway. This was a huge turning point in the war and later led to the U.S. and the Allies in what could be called a victory. Overall, Nimitz's rights and responsibilities, including a very ambitious plan, he was able to change the future of the war and restore hope within the rest of the Pacific Theater and the Allies. Early on, he was just a young boy in the Naval Academy. At the end, he received many awards and was thanked across the U.S. This is a video of Chester Nimitz getting awarded the Distinguished Service Medal by President Truman at the White House Rose Garden ceremony.
This award would not have been possible if not for, once again, Nimitz's incredible acts. He had the responsibility to protect all of his men who were outnumbered by the Japanese and were also extremely damaged. He also had the right to take his risks and put his men in danger. Nimitz's use of calculated risk propelled the U.S. Navy into a victory in the Battle of Midway, a major turning point in the Pacific Theater in World War II. Today, some people even call calculated risk the Nimitz principle, honoring his extremely valiant efforts. If Nimitz did not use calculated risk and take an offensive side during the Battle of Midway, the Japanese most likely would have destroyed the U.S., and the outcome of World War II would have been much different